Okay, appears to be recording. I am looking for the correct set of files here. There we go. All right. This is a short video. Excuse me. This is a relatively short video, or will be a short video. As I've probably mentioned in class, I'm in the process of reworking these lectures, and this is so part of the way through one, which I started off the class that we missed on. All right. So. Basically, all I expect to accomplish in this short part is to introduce people to a couple of concepts. Geological time, for starters, and the concept of Linnaean taxonomy, how we categorize things in nature, how we come up with scientific names, in other words, and the binomial nomenclature, which is the form in which we formally refer to basically any plant or animal in nature. Derived from the Linnaean taxonomic system. All right. Sorry. Okay. Geological time. This is probably something that people are familiar with. At least they've heard some of the terms, don't necessarily know where they fit in. I'm bringing this into the discussion just so that we can orient people in the longer view of time. All right, some people come into anthro class thinking they're going to hear about dinosaurs. This is going to put 65 million years between us and the dinosaurs, pretty much, or 63, something like that, depending on where you start thinking about people. Excuse me. Notice that there are terms that you probably have heard before, like eon, era, period, epoch, and didn't necessarily know how they fit together. This is how they fit together. The longest geological unit of time is an eon, and it encompasses multiple eras, and those eras can be broken down into periods, and the periods can be broken into epochs. Now, there's not a set time, set length for any of these units. Now, we're used to an hour being, so many minutes long. These are more relative times, so they have to do with changes in the Earth, and aren't necessarily the same length of time each time they occur. Right, so all the dinosaurs you'll notice were packed into the Mesozoic era in the same eon that we're in. And it's broken into the Cretaceous period, the Jurassic period, the Triassic period, and those are all the ones that you've probably heard of if you know anything about dinosaurs, and they're all over pop culture or have been over the last 20, 30 years. So almost certainly run into those terms before. But that's what they're referring to, and again, that's 65 million years ago. If you've read the Gould piece by now, which you probably should have, he talks about the extinction of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, proposes hypotheses, explaining that extinction, because we know they're gone. We know they existed, we know they're gone. So he deals with 3 different hypotheses explaining that extinction around that time frame, 65 million years ago. So pay close attention to that. Part of the purpose of that is explaining the nature of science and explaining the process of hypothesis creation and selection. Right. In any case, it sets the dinosaurs far back in time from any kind of humans. They never overlapped by any means. Right. Most of the time that we're talking about is going to be from the Pleistocene forward, Pleistocene epoch forward. Right, Pleistocene right over here. Right, so that's way past dinosaurs. All right. Pleistocene epoch extending back to about 2.6 million years ago, and that's where the spread of the genus Homo happened. Pretty much all the members of the genus Homo that we're talking about in class, the pre-human ancestors, evolved during the Pleistocene. We may make some reference to the Pliocene. The Australopithecines go back into the Pliocene, and some of the earlier Homo habilis as well. Before that, there were what they call proto-apes. Before that, there were proto-monkeys. Proto means something that came before, like a prototype. We're not really going to get into those, although your book does deal with them if you're interested in those periods. We're starting with Australopithecines. We're being very general about that, and just talking about them at the genus level. And then we'll deal with the multiple species of the genus Homo. Not every single one, but we'll deal with that when we get to it. Right. The Holocene epoch is the most recent one. Only started 10,000 years ago. KYA is thousands of years ago. MYA is millions of years ago. Right. And it's called the dawn of civilization on this chart. And in anthropology, they generally don't use the term dawn of civilization or civilization at all. That's more something that you hear from historians. On the other hand, it means the same thing. All right, what happened 10,000 years ago? We may or may not have discussed it in class already, but the development of domestication and then agriculture. Domestication, if you didn't get the definition for that, is when people modify the genetic material of plants or animals for their own benefit. Right? And how do they do that? 10,000 years ago, they do it by selective breeding. Right? They understand that evolution is going on. They don't necessarily understand how it works, but they understand they can manipulate it through choosing which individuals within a species that they have access to are allowed to breed with which other individuals. And so they can select 4 different traits that'll be useful to people. Right. Through doing that, they change the DNA of the population and turn them into domesticated animals. That's the definition of domestication. People modifying the genetic material of plants or animals for their own benefit. All right, so why did that cause the dawn of civilization? It allowed us to collect together in cities to support dense populations and maintain sedentary lives. And from that grew everything that we assigned to the term civilization. Right? Cities, universities, science, all those things grew out of that enormous shift in how people were making a living. Before that, people were always hunting and gathering, right? Meaning they were reliant on wild foods in the environment. They weren't controlling their own food supplies, so they could not develop dense populations. Right? So everything prior to 10,000 years ago was based on hunting and gathering. And just humanity changed immensely in the last 10,000 years, even though there were humans well before that. All right. So you can refer back to this if you want to have sort of place something in geological time or get a sense of the time depth of all of this stuff we're talking about. These are the basic terms of the Linnaean taxonomic system, or what was based in Linnaeus' work on taxonomy, which is quite a long time ago now. It's been modified here and there. Actually, it still has ongoing modification. People are changing things around in there all the time, largely because they come to new understandings of the relationship among animals. They don't change all the different categories, but they change how they're broken up and assigned. Right. You can see that there are a lot more in this right-hand column inside the triangle than there are in the column to the left. Right, these are the sort of the main categories: domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. And this is a hierarchical taxonomic system, meaning it's a system for assigning plants and animals and other living organisms to categories. So you have big categories, and inside those big categories are nested smaller categories that signify that the members of the smaller categories are more closely related than the ones in the big categories. Right? So that's what I mean by hierarchical. You have big categories with small categories inside them, smaller categories still inside of those. All right, so domain is the broadest category, and then we go to kingdoms, and you're probably familiar with things like the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom. Then we go to phylum, which is a narrower, somewhat narrower, but still pretty broad. Then we go to class, order, family, genus, species. Now, out of these, primarily what we're going to be focused on is the last two, genus and species. And the reason for that, I mean, you're welcome to remember the rest of this if you want to, but I'm not going to ask you on any kind of a test. I'm not going to ask you to regurgitate domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. If you do want to memorize that, or you have to do it for bioclass or something, there's a mnemonic device off to the left, which is just a sentence that people find easy to remember that starts with the same letter as something else. Mnemonic device just means something that's meant to help you remember something. All right. So we'll leave that to the side. We don't need to worry about that. And the other graphic, I believe, came out of this version of your textbook, out of the 18th edition of the textbook. I might have gotten it somewhere else. I'm not sure. In any case, that gives you the more specific categories in between the major categories. All right, so the term hominin, for example, is something that has changed in discussions of human evolution, or pre-human ancestors. It used to be that all upright walking apes, anything that walked upright on two legs, anything that was bipedal, was fit into a family group. Right, this doesn't even have actually all the different distinctions on it. Fit into a family group, family level distinction, and that included it excluded the African apes. Right? That was sort of the traditional way of organizing the human evolution. And then it shifted in the last, I don't know, 10, 15, maybe 20 years. So they stopped saying hominid because they included the African apes in that, and shifted to the tribe distinction below that, which is actually, there's a subfamily below that as well. So so they made it a more specific distinction. So hominin is a little bit more specific than hominid. Hominid was a broader term. In any case, I'm not going to trouble you with all that either. Don't necessarily expect you to remember, but if people are interested, as a story behind that, you may hear both, and you may read both in literature. You may see the term hominid, which is a family distinction. You may see the term hominin, as you do in your textbook, which is a tribe level distinction. As I said, we're going to focus on the last two. So genus and species, and there's a reason for that, and that is the binomial nomenclature. Binomial nomenclature down here at the bottom just means the two name. Bi means two, nomial means name, nomen means name. Binomial means two name, nomenclature means system of naming things. So it's the two name system of naming things. Those two names come from the genus and the species, right? We have not defined either of those terms yet. I do intend to do it later in later lectures, but I'll give them to you now as well. Genus refers to a group of like species. A genus is a group of like species. That is, a group of species that are like each other. Species refers to a group of like organisms that can breed and produce fertile offspring. All right, so those are the formal definitions of both genus and species. So genus is the broader category. It includes multiple species. Species is the main unit of analysis when we're talking about evolution. You can also have a subspecies distinction. So in that case, you'd have three names. For example, for fully modern humans, the genus name is Homo, and coming from the Latin meaning man or person, not from the Greek meaning same, different derivation. So the genus is Homo, and there are multiple species of Homo, and ours is sapiens, which means wise. So we're wise men, wise people. And so our species name in the binomial nomenclature is Homo sapiens, the genus and the species. Now, if we talk about different populations of humans that have existed in the past, there's only one population. There's only one species of human extant today. There are no. Well, no, people might make a case for subspecies, but for the most part, in anthropology, they do not. Right? It depends on how you define subspecies, right? In any case, I've seen it in a biotext. I've never seen it in an anthropology text in the last 20 years. So, past species, subspecies of humans, though, are not entirely uncommon. People do designate, I've seen Neanderthal designated as subspecies of Homo sapiens, in which case it would be Homo sapiens neanderthalensis. All right, so it'd have a third name on there that designated a subspecies distinction, while the species name was the same. All right, people do argue still about whether Neanderthals are members of the species Homo sapiens or whether they constitute their own species, in which case they would be Homo neanderthalensis, genus and species. So if you see three, there's a subspecies distinction. Right, if you see two, it's genus and species. Right. Now, what I did here was just, for the purposes of class, I just kind of ran through some different species and got closer and closer to people, so you could see where the distinctions were. Right. These are the names of the group within the category that we're talking about. So the domain of this leopard, I almost call it jaguar, it's leopard. Domain of this leopard is Eukarya. The kingdom is Animalia, it's an animal. Phylum is Chordata, things with spinal cords. Class is Mammalia, mammals, things with fur or hair and producing milk. Probably other things that distinguish mammals, but those are the major things that people think of. The order is carnivora, things that eat meat almost exclusively. And the family is Felidae, having to do with cats, and genus Panthera, particular type of cats, and species Pardus. So we'd call this one Panthera pardus. Right, and the proper way to note that is write the whole thing out, italicize the whole thing, capitalize the name of the genus, but not the species. Right, so that's the formally correct way of writing that. You can italicize or you can underline. Those are both grammatically equivalent. So here we'll see an alternative in a second too. This is a vervet monkey. as I recall, and you can see where it becomes distinct from, in terms of the classification, from the leopard. Right, about halfway down. So it's a member of the same. Oops, hang on, hit a button. Sorry about that. There we go. All right, member of the same domain, that's the biggest category. Member of the animal kingdom still. Member of the phylum Chordata. A member of the same class. It's a mammal as well, but it's not a carnivore. It's a primate. Right? Primates are distinguished by other characteristics. All right, so it's separate. It's separate from big cats at the level of the order. All right, so I changed the color here just so you can see it more easily. The family is Cercopithecidae. They're called Cercopithecoids. There's always a casual name in addition to the formal name when it's spelled out. So genus is Chlorocebus, species is Pidgeothrus. So Chlorocebus pidgeothrus would be the general binomial nomenclature tag for this one. And rule of thumb is you can abbreviate this, and you do it by abbreviating the genus and spelling out the species, and just putting a period after the capital letter C in this case. And usually, if you're writing a paper or something and you're using these terms, you write the whole thing out the first time so people know what you're talking about, and then you can abbreviate from that point forward. But it's not incorrect to abbreviate so long as you do that. All right, so obviously the monkeys are closer to us than the cats. We'll get even closer by taking this over to a great ape. That's a chimpanzee. And we'll look at where the split occurs. In this case, it's at the family level, right? We're talking about the family Hominidae, and the meaning of that has shifted a little bit, but it doesn't matter in terms of this discussion. All right, so they're also in the primate order. You can see they're alike in more ways than the monkey and the leopard were alike, but they're different at the level of the family. These are Cercopithecoids. These are members of Hominidae. So, as I said, they included the African apes in that relatively recently. Genus level, Chlorocebus here, Pan here, and Troglodytes is the species name. So the correct name for this one is Pan Troglodytes. If you ever heard the term troglodyte used as an insult, that's why. It refers to chimpanzees. All right, let's get all the way home and compare our Pan Troglodytes to our Homo sapiens. Here you can see that we're the same all the way through the family level. As I said, the African great apes were included in Hominidae recently, so we're all members of the same family in terms of this classification system. If we had broken it down to the smaller categories, we'd see the distinction at the tribe level. Right? In any case, the genus for us, as I said before, is Homo, and the species name is Sapiens. Once again, if you do see a third one on there, that's a subspecies distinction, meaning it's a distinction below the level of species which we just defined at the beginning of this as a group of like organisms that can breed and produce fertile offspring. All right, so they're different, but not so different that they can't reproduce with other members, other populations. All right, that is as far as that goes, and that's pretty much what I wanted to introduce there. So we'll break it off, and I'll pick up with a general discussion of evolution in science. Break out of that, and closing it down. Thank you very much.